Marines had only 4 blocks to clear in Hue, but it's easy to see how tough a job that was.
Amazing how many people it takes to clear a house.
Yeah, it's going to take up to a company of 100 men to clear these 4 houses, so a platoon in each, and that's stretching us.
You've got to clear every single room one at a time, and in each room there could be booby traps, tripwires, trapdoors and hidden entrances. Around every corner there could be someone about to kill you.
Get him in, Millside! Go!
I move!
Get the wall!
You've got 3 windows, 1 door, top left entry point, okay? All happy with that one, sir?
Yeah, it's got the ladder on it.
See, that's the ladder on it, yeah. Okay, let's go! Go, go! Okay, Stuart, let's get back, move back,
One enemy dead! One friendly casualty! Yeah. Go, mate, get up! 2 enemy dead! 3 dead now!
Okay.
The exercise was over and the buildings retaken. Alex, tell us what you made of the operation. I mean, that was a typical para operation, clearing houses. How successful do you think it was?
It went according to plan and about the same timescale. It took us about 2 hours, I think, to take the 4 buildings.
And the overwhelmingly noticeable and striking thing about it all has been the number of people required to clear just a few buildings here. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no... You can't deploy your kind of, your fantastic technology and your strike aircraft or your artillery, because it's a matter of cleaning out every single room, and there's no other way than doing that. It's the good old-fashioned send in the infantry and clean it out room by room. And the idea of doing that day after day after day like those guys in Hue is unimaginable. February 3rd, 4 days into the Tet Offensive, the ban on supporting air attacks in the new city was finally lifted. With this air support and with their tanks, the Marines' progress started to speed up.
We tried our best to avoid malicious damage. As a result of their being so entrenched, it required for us to bring maximum firepower at our disposal to eliminate them. But we were fortunate that we did have the weapons that were capable of routing the MVA and the Viet Cong out of their positions.
Three days later, the Marines finally secured the local government building.
Hard, wait, no, Courtney. Keep it. Are you finished? We want to get the hell out.
It had taken a week to advance just 800 meters. Little more than 100 meters, that's about 100 yards a day. Retaking these few blocks had cost many wounded and many lives on both sides. The North Vietnamese Army's resistance on the south side of the city was now broken. But in the citadel, over on the north side of the river, fighting had reached stalemate, and the North Vietnamese Army had the South Vietnamese troops boxed in.
On February the 12th, the South Vietnamese sent the American Marines a call for help. The trouble was that the bridge connecting the new city with the Imperial Citadel had been blown up by the communists. The only way of getting over there was by river. At 5:30 that afternoon, one battle-weary company of Marines embarked on fast boats and sped off down the Perfume River. They sat precariously balanced on ammunition crates, and they came under heavy fire from North Vietnamese guns hidden along this bank just here.
It was a nerve-wracking journey, but the only way to help the South Vietnamese and win the battle for Hue was for the Marines to get into the old city. This is where the boats picked up the Marines. Here it is on the map case, just here on the south side of the Perfume River. They were ferried up the river, round here, to the northeast corner of the citadel, where the South Vietnamese forces were trapped. Men and supplies were offloaded near one of the gates and rushed in to reinforce the South Vietnamese inside. The Marines now had to fight not just in the more densely packed streets of the citadel, but against an enemy protected by bunkers and battlements on walls several meters thick. The North Vietnamese were scattered throughout the city and heavily entrenched on the eastern side of the citadel and on the walls of the Imperial Palace itself. The South Vietnamese had tried but failed to push back their enemy. It was now up to the Marines. Their plan was to push south, down the narrow streets held by the North Vietnamese army, towards the Tong Tu Gate, where they had been ambushed 2 long weeks before.
Now the Marines found themselves in another unfamiliar battlefield, a gigantic fortress surrounded by high battlements and defensive moats. In fact, this citadel was such a unique landmark that, unlike in the new city, the South Vietnamese still wouldn't allow the Americans to bomb it. In some places, these historic walls are up to 100 feet thick. This new environment presented the Marines with some difficult choices. They could either stay down there in that tight warren of streets fighting house to house, or they could come up here onto the walls where there was far greater mobility, but they would be totally exposed.
How long do you think it's going to take you to get through this city?
Oh, we'll be here in a few weeks anyway, cleaning it out. It'll take a little while to get it out of here.
You lost any friends?
Quite a few. We lost one the other day, good buddy. The whole thing stinks, really.
By now, the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong were beginning to suffer. But General Giap's men knew that for every day the communist flag flew over this sacred city, it sent out powerful propaganda messages to the Vietnamese people and, even more significantly, to America.
A week later, the communists were still holding out. This imperial palace was the source of intense frustration for the Marines. They were still forbidden from simply levelling the walls, and as a result, they were losing men fast.
You had this utter devastation all around you. You had this horrible smell. I mean, you just cannot describe the smell of death, especially when you're looking at it a couple of weeks along.
Then the Marines got some welcome news. The US Airborne Cavalry had managed to cut off their enemy's supply line into the old city here. And on top of this, the South Vietnamese had given permission for airstrikes on the citadel. The noose was tightening round the communists. They were fighting for survival, and the Americans prepared for their final push. As the Marines forced their way towards the southeast corner of the citadel, two A4 jets dropped napalm to clear one area.